Okay, so we're a little over halfway through 2024 now, and Elementor has made leaps and strides this year. They are, every time I open my YouTube, I'm constantly also getting emails from them saying they're dropping new features, which is much needed. As we know, there are a lot of builders out now with a lot of different features, and a lot of them are good for specific things and not good for other things. How has Elementor's recent updates helped stack it against these competitors in the market? Let's review some of them and talk about what they added and also what they could do to the features that they added to help make them better and actually compare to things that exist currently. Let's start all the way with Elementor 3.20, which dropped earlier this year, where they introduced dynamic conditions. Now, dynamic conditions are great, but this can be significantly beefed up. Basically, the thing that's missing from this that would make it that much more useful is having it linked to ACF fields and any ACF field in the background, and specifically also being able to show or hide elements based on if a field is filled out or it's not. This is something that I can do currently with dynamic, dynamic.000. This is something I use a lot, honestly, for builds because they will have certain post types, whether that's news or let's say we're doing an architecture website and they have specific stats that they want to show, but they don't always have stats for every build. We want to dynamically show that if it's there and hide it if it's not. And that could be even like a whole section. So for example, I could hide a whole section of elements based on if the featured tag is or isn't there. Now let's jump to Elementor 3.21. where they introduced the loop taxonomy, which we've been waiting for a long time. I mean, not having the ability to filter was significantly limiting, and adding this feature definitely helps, but it's still very, very basic. It only allows for one type of taxonomy, but we need much more flexibility. Again, it would be great if it worked with ACF. It'd be great if I could combine it with tags and categories as an example, so I could filter for a specific category and a specific tag. It'd be nice if it worked a little bit more like an e-commerce one where I could like reset instead of just having them listed out. I'm sure those are things that are going to come along eventually. This is something that right now we basically don't use at all because we use something more robust right now, which is Search and Filter or Search and Filter Pro. We basically use that on almost every build just because this loop taxonomy is just not up to par. It's not as robust as we need for a lot of these builds. Now jumping to pretty recently with Elementor 3.22, where they introduced two new key elements. Number one being element caching. Now this is great. Throughout these different drops of Elementor 3.2, they have also sped up the builder itself and speeding up the front end by cleaning up the code, which is significantly needed. As we know, Elementor can get pretty bloated, especially now that we're using containers. I'm using child containers inside containers, and it can get pretty bloated pretty quickly. And so with the introduction of element caching, this significantly speeds up these websites. Basically, if you don't know what element caching is, it speeds up the output of servers by drastically reducing memory usage and increasing load times by up to 70%. Now, I haven't tested this myself specifically, but it is a great step forward in speeding up websites. Now, the next thing that they introduced was the off-canvas widget, which it is nice to have a specific element like this that I can introduce on pages, but I could basically do this without an on-page widget and just trigger and just make a pop-up. And then I can trigger that pop-up based on basically any element now. Now let's jump to a little bit more recently with Elementor 3.23. They finally introduced AJAX search results with nested elements. Now this is awesome. We can finally design what it looks like and get AJAX results as you search. This is something that's been needed for so long. Can't wait until they also introduce that extra filtering capabilities of being able to have more advanced search. Next, they introduced the floating buttons, which you could actually do kind of as a workaround by adding it within the header theme builder by actually just making it position fixed. Next thing they added is link in bio, which is basically just a template library, which is nice, but this is something you could already do manually, and this is something we were offering to most clients in the past because we want to keep them within that ecosystem. So why would I drive a user to a link tree when I could just drive them to the website itself? And I can show dynamic website content as well and keep them all within that ecosystem. Now, again, there is more performance and accessibility additions in 3.23, specifically focused on improving the editor speed, which is much needed, especially when you have really advanced websites with a lot of custom CSS. We've run into that on some websites that are very complicated, where we have templates and then we have background blurs and we have nested containers. One specific website that I'm thinking of right now, it's super hard to get it to load. Like, basically I have to go in the navigator and hide every other element just so I can edit the elements on that page. So it's really nice that they're focusing on this, not just the front end as well, for us who are a little bit more advanced Elementor users. Now, my overall thoughts on where Elementor is, I want to start with the pros. I really like that seems like they're listening to users now and implementing features that previously weren't there or were done by other plugins, like stuff that I mentioned within this video. And I think these are the beginning steps, and they will improve on those features. And I really hope to see that in the future. And it's awesome that they are updating things as fast as they are. Now, the cons, I think they are lacking though in a few departments, specifically global classes and animations. With global classes, this is something you can do in Elementor by adding global site CSS and tagging specific elements with classes. But this would be nice if they actually implemented this into the builder rather than us having to go in and do it there. I don't know if there would be a better way for it right now off the top of my head, but that's just a suggestion that I have. And then next is just the motion graphics. We have very basic entrance animations, and it would be nice if they even let us tie in our own specific CSS animations based on the visible trigger in JavaScript. So that would be nice. And or if they just did interactive animations, kind of like what Webflow does. So if I do some certain action, something else happens, or if I scroll into the viewpoint, it'd be fantastic if or when they implement this. It'll drastically reduce the use of other platforms, let's say like Motion Page, which allow you to do this, but again, it's not natively built in. And I assume this is something that they are working on, but I think those two changes, along with the stuff that I kind of mentioned in this video, will bring Elementor that much higher in the ecosystem of all the CMSs out there. Overall, I mean, Elementor is a great platform. They've been improving it a lot this year, and I'm so happy to see that, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it.